Welcome to my presentation for Theory of the Event. This presentation is about the movie Come and See by Elem Klimov and will be broken up into 3 parts. The first part, which you're watching now, discusses our topic and its historical background from a more general standpoint. And parts 2 and 3 cover the topic in relation to genre and event respectively. This will be a largely audio-visual experience, but I'll provide sources at the end of part 3 in case anyone would like further reading. I've edited quoted material for brevity and flow. If you wish to watch the movie I'm speaking about today before watching my presentation, it's available to stream for free on YouTube, although I want to include a blanket content warning because the film is very challenging to watch. To understand Come and See the film, we first have to understand the history it tries to address. It is, perhaps more than anything, a film which collapses a national memory, a national trauma, into a single powerful narrative. The film's title comes from the Book of Revelation. And when he had opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th beast say, "Come and see." And I looked, and beheld a pale horse. And his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. This passage, perhaps overwrought in another context, encapsulates the experience of World War II with a grave figurative accuracy. This movie was co-written by director Elem Klimov and Alice Adamowicz, a critic and writer who, like Klimov, gradually transitioned from political dissident to Soviet official amidst the gradual opening up of the state. The script is largely adapted from Adamowicz's The Katyn story, about his experience as an adolescent partisan messenger and combatant in German-occupied Belarus. Katyn is the name of one of the over 600 Belarusian villages, which was burnt with all of its inhabitants in what is termed the Holocaust of Bullets. This stage of German invasion was marked by a less organized, more chaotic campaign of violence which tore through Eastern Europe, resulting in the deaths of millions. Communities suspected of housing partisans were treated with especial severity. Historian Per Anders Rudling writes that by late 1942, Hermann Goering ordered that in partisan-infested areas, all food was to be confiscated, all able-bodied men and women were to be evacuated as forced labor, and children were to be sent to special camps. At this point, it became a standard practice for the Germans and their local collaborators to surround and burn villages of supporting partisans. Come and See follows the story of a young teenage boy in the midst of these conditions, and gives us a real-time portrait of the process of war trauma, of sustained experience at or even beyond the limits of what human beings can handle with their sanity intact. Our protagonist, Florian, or Fliora in Belarusian, begins our story as a child playing in the sand, searching for left-behind weapons. This portrait of wartime innocence quickly turns serious, as Florian is pressed into partisan service against the desperate pleas of his mother, within the first 5 minutes of the runtime. The rest of the film closely follows Florian's struggle for survival as he is separated from his squadron and takes on a companion named Glasha, soon learning that in his absence his whole family has died. After attempting to steal food to supply the remnants of his home village, Florian finds himself once again alone on a battlefield, the air filled with tracer fire. In the final third of the film, Florian is a witness to the burning of the inhabitants of Perhodi, narrowly escaping death himself, in what is one of the most emotionally challenging sequences in modern cinema. After this event, Florian witnesses the summary execution of the captured Einsatzgruppe who carried out the destruction of Perhodi and undergoes a moral crisis, stylized as his coming face-to-face with a baby Hitler after repeatedly discharging his rifle into a portrait of the Fuhrer left in a puddle. The final shot is of Florian disappearing into oppressive marching men, ostensibly continuing his service in the partisan forces. The film, which is an at times highly realistic portrait of war, was shot on location in Belarus with only natural lighting. In an interview, Klimov describes the great care that they had to take to avoid lasting trauma for the young actors involved. Quote, "We were well aware that it would be a boy, not a grown-up. It was a very difficult role, with extreme emotional states. We started filming in Belarus. It took a long time, which means we were not very pragmatic. Why so? Because we had taken for the main role Alyosha Kravchenko, a nice guy of 13 years. He was new in the cinema. When you're a pro, you have a kind of emotional defense. But when you have no skills and only eagerness, when you listen to the director and feel that you're doing something really important, it could have had a very sad ending. He could have landed in an asylum because he experienced desperate states. I don't even mean when they were drowning in a quagmire, or when real bullets were hissing over our heads." Later, Alyosha admitted that most terrible for him were the scenes in the wooden barn into which the whole family had been driven, or whole village had been driven, rather. And there he had his most terrible experience. He told me later, "I nearly lost my mind in there. You know, the point is that the Belarusians' genes remember that Holocaust." The struggle Klimov describes is replete in Kravchenko's performance. The film is dominated by facial close-ups, a method which traces the subjective experience of trauma as it is literally etched into Florian's visage. The transformation Kravchenko's face undergoes is almost unnatural, and seems only partially to be a result of makeup. Film writer Lloyd Michaels describes it thusly. When he looks once more into the camera at the film's conclusion, again with no defined object of his gaze within the diegesis, he has become a progeriac before our eyes. Indeed, trauma and the loss of innocence is a central theme of Come and See. In the next part of this presentation, we'll take a look at how this film compares to early Soviet war cinema, and examine how Come and See both practically and symbolically exemplified the trend of glasnost in late 1980s Russia.